Warning, very unpopular video ahead. Hello everyone, in this video I'm gonna say something that apparently nobody else wants to say. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, welcome back to MixPass TV. Hope you're having a great day. Before we start, please check the info box down below for my mixing courses on Pro Mix Academy, free plugin special discounts and offers, and of course if you want to support the channel, but most important, if you really want to learn how to mix and master professionally, click the join button down here, become a MixPass TV member and access the already big and always growing library of full mixing courses, start to finish, mastering courses on so many different genres, special videos and a lot more. And if you missed the biggest event of the year, a remix contest for my artist Bella Kelly's new single Heartbreak Motel is up and running, and there's still time with over $30,000 in prizes between plugins and hardware. Alright, this is sort of a video response to some of the comments that I got on my excerpt from my live stream on Instagram, I think, in which I was responding to one of you guys asking me, do you mix with a limiter on? Do you print your mix with a limiter on? And of course I answered, no, I absolutely don't. And I proceeded to explain why I preach not to use a limiter on your 2-bus when mixing. And the reasons that I gave, which is usually the case when I talk about something, otherwise I keep my mouth shut, are objective, provable, and kind of logic. And of course, when I replied that question, I also gave some exceptions, some of the cases in which that practice is not only acceptable but wanted. And if you want to watch the video, you want to hear the reasons, you want to read all the comments, I'll put the link of that video down below or here somewhere. And 99% of the people agreed with me in that video, but it's the internet, it's inevitable, someone will argue it. And they did argue it by doing the same exact thing that everybody else does on the internet, which is by saying that famous engineer mixed with a limiter on, or mixed with 2 limiters on. And here comes the unpopular thing, the thing that nobody wants to say. Some people, but this happens in every field, mix engineers, master engineers, musicians, mechanics, doctors, you name it, they get to the result despite doing something wrong, not because of it. Shit. And in the case of this, a limiter on the 2-bus, maybe, you know, knocking down 2-3 dBs, maybe they did so many other amazing things in the mix that that detail doesn't really count that much. Yet, it would still be better if they didn't do it. This is of course taking away those exceptions that I talked about in the original video, okay? So let's say a mix engineer that is amazing, he does everything amazing, balancing, compression, the EQ, imaging, everything, and then he has a limiter on the 2-bus knocking 2-3 dB and he mixes into it. It won't make or break the mix, but it's still objectively, not subjectively, objectively wrong. And it would be better if it didn't. And again, I feel like I have to keep putting qualifiers there. If you're mixing your own stuff and you do your own mastering and basically you are everything, you produce, mix, master, wipe the floor and all that, and your master is gonna be that limiter at the end of your mix, I mean, that doesn't matter. We're not talking about that, okay? In those situations, it doesn't matter. And I'm sure that everyone, 90% of you guys, at some point heard in an interview or read an article, some big engineer explaining something wrong. And they're convinced of it, right? For example, I use this plugin because it does this. And you go, no, that plugin actually doesn't do that, what you're saying right there. Or some engineer explaining a technique and then explaining why they like it, but that technique doesn't match what they wanted to get out of it. And I'm sure many of you heard at least once something like this. So how comes that some engineers do this? They do something wrong, or they have an idea of how a plugin works or a unit works, but it just doesn't, or it some cases does the opposite, because that doesn't really matter that much. Is one thing in the hundreds of thousands different variables that a mix has. So you do so many things, and I mean, that's why mixing is so difficult when done professionally, that if you do one thing wrong or 10 things wrong, unless it's something major, it doesn't really make or break the mix. Would be better if you did it right? Of course it would. But nobody will ever have the mix without that single mistake or two, and the mix with the single mistake or two to compare. All right, and even if you were to compare, probably it's not such a big of a deal unless you really fucked up, you know? So it happens. But my point is, try to recognize when this happens, not just because an engineer has a great record of credits. It means that every single thing they say it's correct or you should embrace it. First of all, because it's usually very personal, and what it works for him might not work for you. One thing is always tied to hundreds other things. So if you take one out, the entire chain might not work. All right. So try to learn, but also try to be critical, even with people that has a great list of credits. Well, because first of all, everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes. And second, because again, sometimes it happens. People get to the result in spite of what they do, not because they do that thing. I remember hearing another big engineer that I really love. I love his work. He's a great person. I don't remember the specifics. I'm not trying to hide names or something. I really don't. But I remember him speaking in an interview and just dropped one thing like that. It was like, oh, I do this because of this. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? That's absolutely like the opposite. And I was like, wow, why? And then I thought about it and was like, well, it doesn't really matter in a mix. I mean, it would be better if you didn't do it, or even if the reasoning, the thought process as to why they do something, like let's say parallel EQ, okay? Parallel EQ, if you do it without a linear phase equalizer, it will cause phase shift. Is a fact, is objective, is repeatable, is provable, right? It's science.
Yes, science!
If you EQ parallel something, let's say a kick drum, and then you add a parallel kick drum and you EQ it with a regular EQ, you will create phase shift. And you could create a phase shift in a frequency range in which it will make your low end hollow, my famous video on HPF, right? But some engineers do compensate automatically for that with some other thing. Are they making their life more complicated? Yeah, they are. But it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's fixable, but wouldn't it be better if you knew the correct way to do it? So, you know, the more you know, the better, right? Knowledge is never a problem. And can you get away with winging it? Yeah, many do. I don't think it's the right way to do it. All right, this is just me. I like to study. I like to be precise. I like to science the hell out of things. So I'm faster and I'm more confident about the things that I do. Parallel EQ is a great example because I talked about it before, and many engineers do parallel EQ, but it's still gonna cause a phase shift. Doesn't matter who said it. Let's say Andy Wallace, which is god of mixing for me, right? He says he uses parallel EQ. Okay. I mean, he probably knows that parallel EQ causes phase cancellation, but he knows how to compensate, and maybe the way he compensates for that, it gives him a different result that it would be unattainable without it. And another difference is when someone does a small mistake like that, I keep calling it a mistake and I'm explaining why. They never give you an objective explanation, right? They just give you the subjective explanation, the taste side. I like it. I like how it sounds, which is totally legit. So many, I mean, guitar distortion started because someone kicked an amp and, you know, made it rattle. And probably the people around them were like, the hell is that? But he liked it and, you know, became a thing. But those are exceptions. Let's not take the exceptions as a rule. On the other hand, when I try to give people information, I do my absolute best in trying to give the correct information and explain the correct way to do things. And in order for me to be confident of the things that I say, I only always speak of facts that are provable, that are objective, that are repeatable, and somehow scientifically provable, all right? And then, of course, this is music, so it's all a matter of taste and everything. But this also brings me to the second set of comments on that video, and that is the dreaded sentence, "There are no rules."
There are no rules.
Ignorance is bliss.
And I will talk about this though in another video. For this one, I want to hear your comments down below. The concept is pretty simple. Some people get to the result despite few mistakes that they make along the way, not because of it. Let me know what you think in the comment down below. Please like the video if you did like it, share it around, check all the links in the info box down below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.
Hands on my neck, hands grip my throat. Lift me up, man, take control. Heart is so gone.